You are listening to Unity in Our Community on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.
I have YesCymru representative here, and we're talking all about Welsh independence. And in the break, we thought that we would bring up the question of democracy, because we're going through a troubling time, I would say, in the UK at the moment politically, and it doesn't really feel like there is much democracy, really.
No, I agree with you. There's definitely a democratic deficit, and it's even more acute in Wales, and it's going to become even more acute in Wales. I think we're going from 40 MPs to 32. 32 Welsh MPs in Westminster. That is not going to have an impact on any decision making in any way, shape or form ever, which means that we're always going to be having a government elected by other people telling us what we can and can't do. And that's not democratic at all. I mean, the whole point of a democracy is to have decision making as close as possible to the people, not as far away as possible. It definitely speaks to the opportunity within independence when it comes to democracy. And that opportunity is to change that and to have government closer to the people. And again, 3.14 million people, we're a small enough country that we can really do that. We're not quite as small as a place like Iceland. I had a good friend, or my father's good friend from Iceland. He told me a story once, which I honestly didn't believe at the time, but it is true, I promise you, about a pothole he had in the road outside his house. And Oli told me that he'd had enough of this pothole. It was damaging his car as he was driving through it after about a year and a half. So he picked up the phone, and as he said it, he spoke to the minister, the transport minister. And I said, "No, you didn't, Ollie. There's no way you picked up the phone and spoke to the transport minister." To which he responded, well, it was the secretary's day off, so I spoke to the minister because the minister answered the phone.
That's excellent.
And that's what you can do in a nation of 380,000 people. And obviously we wouldn't quite have that connection, but we could certainly have a better connection.
It's funny because when you were saying that before, you were saying about representatives and things, what came to my mind was, how government and people are the same. We're all people. And there's this big separation between, those are the decision makers and we just sit back and do nothing kind of thing. And I just think this has to change, like this relationship, because we all, are human beings. We all have the same needs to a certain extent. You know what I mean? Like we need shelter, we need food, and we need to organise ourselves around everybody's basic needs being met. And then obviously you can have differences. Obviously there's different ways of doing things, but it's interesting that they had that direct connection, which I feel like we don't really have, do we?
No, we don't. And, we're partly to blame for this ourselves. We have to take responsibility, because in a democracy, if you don't engage with the democratic process, then you're not contributing to the democracy. So when we choose not to vote, or when we choose not to express a political opinion, and when we choose not to really think about things, put our head down, try and get on with, all the challenges that we face, we're disengaging ourselves and we're not fulfilling our side of that social contract when it comes to being part of the decision-making process. But that's understandable too in a situation where, particularly again in Wales, where engagement doesn't really get you anywhere because it doesn't influence decisions. And there are notorious examples of this, like Tryweryn, when every single Welsh MP was against it, but they just carried on and did it. There are, it's a constant rolling example, really, because I think in the last 100 years, Wales has only directly voted for the party in government in Westminster 35 years out of 100, because we've never, ever voted a majority Tory government here in Wales. And yet 65 years have been Tory governments. So you're not getting the representative government. So democracy isn't working for you. Your votes aren't making a difference. No wonder that you become disengaged. And that's another reason I'm such a big fan of independence as a catalyst and as a point of change, because it gives us all that opportunity to really re-engage. You know, 100 years ago, my mother has my great-grandmother's diaries. My great-grandmother was from Caerphilly. And she was writing in her diary every day 100 years ago. And every single day she was writing about politics. And
That's so interesting.
And my great-grandmother wasn't a politician. It was just what people talked about all the time. It was so important to them. And now we've had that taken away from us. And in a way, we have to take it back. And becoming an independent nation lets us take it back. It lets us seize the initiative. And I think we need to do that just for everybody's health and well-being, to be honest.
Well, I think we need to move into kind of a hopeful era.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because 13 years of austerity is like, and now this, you know, extra cost of living stuff is so harsh on everybody at the moment.
It is. And a lot of that cost of living crisis has been imposed upon us by poor government. You know, we can't get away from that. You know, and the statistics are increasingly showing that now. And that poor government has been out of our control. You know, we didn't vote for that government. We can't change it because we don't have the levers and the infrastructure to change things in Wales, because that doesn't belong to us. You know, Westminster decides what happens. So if we want to put our priorities first, we can't. I mean, even the limited devolution that we have and the Senedd, you know, they're given X amount of money, which they have to spend on certain services. So most of it gets sucked up by education and health instantly. So there's no real sort of self-government there. It's just an allocation of funds in a slightly different way. And it's horrendously inadequate. It also allows the Senedd to get off the hook lightly by pointing the finger at Westminster.
Yeah, I always get a bit confused about that.
Yeah, it's just a blame game, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we don't need that. And, you know, once you're an independent nation, you know that your leaders are your leaders. They are accountable. I'm a firm believer in transparency myself, and I would like to see incredibly transparent government in a new independent Wales. But if they're failing in their obligation to you, that they're part of the social contract as your elected representatives in government, then you just vote them out and you vote someone else in. And it's entirely in your hands. And it does make a difference.
Like at the moment, not even the majority of the UK voted for Boris Johnson.
So
because of the system, the way it's set up.
First past the post means that
Yeah.
you never get a majority government in a democratic sense.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think obviously it's a UK-wide problem, but I think you've thought about it. If Wales was to be independent, then we could decide, you know, what was the best and most democratic system.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's incredibly unusual. Out of that, I think 196 nations that I mentioned that are in independent sovereign nations in the world at the moment, you know, hardly any of them don't have a constitution. Everyone has a constitution. The UK doesn't. I mean,
we need one.
Well, it would help, I think. And an independent Wales would obviously need a constitution. And the scenario I imagine, and the scenario that I would certainly like to see, is that once Wales has made it clear that it wants to be an independent nation, and that process is going to happen, that those discussions are ongoing, then the people of Wales get to come together in citizen assemblies or other ways and discuss the nature and shape of the constitution they wish to have. Obviously with expert guidance, but with input from every corner of the nation. And then you get to write your social contract. You know, that social contract can be written by the people of Wales, not imposed on the people of Wales, but written by the people of Wales.
That would be amazing. You know, it would be really great. Like, I mean, what could you do if you were like a nation of 3 million? Like, you could really have some, you know, you could get everybody's voice heard. Hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've recently done this, weirdly enough, in Iceland again. Iceland adopted a constitution when they became independent in 1944. And the idea was that they'd do it quickly so that they could be independent. And then they would revise it quite swiftly. Obviously, once you are independent, the pressure's off. So they've only just got round to doing this now, 70 years or so later. And the way they've done that is a two-pronged approach. They've had an official channel of doing it, and then they've had citizen assemblies coming together to feed into that official channel. So there's been a really protracted and involved national conversation about it. And I think that gives everybody ownership, which is really important, but it also allows you to create something which is reflective of your culture. And I think that's important. Rather than just bringing something in, you create your own constitution reflective of your culture and the nation that you want to become and wish to be. And I think that's an incredibly healthy thing to do.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds very hopeful to me. I'm just going to go to a tune now. You know this one, Black and Gold. And welcome back. We are just going to be wrapping up soon. We've got about 7 minutes left of the show. And so what would you like to say to anyone out there listening who, about the way forward for an independent Wales, wrapping up? I mean, we did talk a little bit as well, about confidence and bravery and things like that. So what is the way forward?
Yeah, I mean, the bravery and confidence. I like to think of the independence ABC, which is ambition, bravery, and confidence. And I think we need to find our ambition, our bravery, and our confidence. And then it's a question of finding our own way forward. And that's what independence is all about. And you can call it a Welsh way or, our way, but it needs to be our way. And when I say our, I mean all of the people who live in Wales today, wherever they're from, whatever their current political views are, an independent Wales will be for everyone who lives in Wales. And people are the most important ingredient. I know we've spoken about natural resources and all the other things that Wales has to offer, but fundamentally, people are what makes your society, and people are what makes it work. And it's people that have the ability to unlock the hope that you need and to make people's lives better and to create a quality of life, a living experience, which is infinitely superior to the one we're currently existing and experiencing. So that's what we have to do. And for me, independence is the doorway for us to be able to do that. Because as soon as we cross through that doorway, then suddenly everything is open and we're free to do, free in many senses, not just a free and independent nation, but free to lay the groundwork and set the pathways for the generations to come as well as our own. And I'm particularly keen on that. I've got 5 kids and, I'm really, really keen that we remember that we're borrowing this world from our children, and we should give it back to them in a better state than we've taken it from them.
Yeah, well, that's no small feat, is it? But I think that is a brilliant summary and like a positive outlook for the future for Wales. I think, at the moment, I think that's why I called the show Unity in the Community, because it's good to have these conversations and talk to all different types of people and have the communication going and, not have that separation of them and us and not be scared to talk about new ideas.
Oh, no, absolutely. Innovation is key. I mean, that's what we can do. We can have a culture of constant innovation in Wales.
And it also just celebrate Wales, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, by the way. I've really enjoyed myself.
I have enjoyed you talking here, and I'm really surprised that, I was the biggest surprise for me was like how much support there is right now for Welsh independence. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But thank you so much for coming in. And we're going to play See Sense by Stasis, sorry.
My son's university band, believe it or not.
Okay, so this is Stasis, and it's See Sense, and it's an exclusive because it's a radio edit just for our radio.
It is.
Yeah. So thank you again. If anyone wants to get in touch, they can just go to your website, isn't it? YesCymru.org, is it? Or
yes.cymru.
Yes.cymru.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.cymru. Oh. Yeah, check them out. What do you think? Have that conversation. Maybe they're against it, maybe they're for it. Who knows? But that's all about what democracy is about, isn't it? Having these conversations. So I will see you next week, guys. Take care. Until then, let's listen to this brilliant track.
across the borderlines. I don't think it's asking much for us to give a little about the people who share the earth with the rest of us. But you can only see red. You only see malicious intent. Well, I see kill the flow and